Hey friend, tonight we drift far from the noise of the modern world back into the hush of ancient Egypt, where even silence spoke louder than words. Here the desert wind carries the scent of lotus blossoms and melting perfumed wax, where linen robes rustle like whispers in the heat, and where every bow, every gesture, every word was measured against the balance of Ma'at, the invisible order that bound gods, pharaohs, and common folk alike. This is not the Egypt of tourist postcards or crumbling pyramids beneath the blazing sun. This is the Egypt of daily life, of families gathered in shaded courtyards, of scribes bending carefully over papyrus by flickering oil lamps, of young lovers whose fingertips nearly touch but never cross the line of propriety. So lay your head down and let the Nile carry you. Tonight we will walk among them, the men and women who lived not by choice, but by custom, their lives braided together by rules as old as the gods themselves. The bow and the breath. Imagine the sun, a relentless, white-hot disk in a sapphire sky that has not yet reached its zenith. The air in the city streets beyond these walls is a familiar, living thing, thick with the scent of baked earth, the damp vegetal promise of river water, and the distant, comforting aroma of 1,000 cooking fires. It is the smell of life in all its chaotic, vibrant energy. But as you pass through the monumental gateway of the temple precinct, the world changes. You step from the sun's direct fury into the cool, deep shadow of the great pylon, and the air itself seems to shift in character. It grows stiller, heavier, carrying a taste of something ancient and profoundly sacred, the fine mineral dust of millennia, and the sweet, resinous smoke of incense that is seeped into the very molecules of the stone. This is not the air of mortals. It is the exhalation of the gods. You are approaching a space where the veil between the world of humanity and the realm of the divine is at its thinnest, and your every movement, every thought, every breath must reflect this profound and solemn truth. Your sandals, woven from the papyrus reeds that are the gift of the Nile, make only the softest, most respectful whisper against the massive, polished paving stones. All around you, the world is deliberately, purposefully muted. The boisterous calls of the marketplace, the haggling of merchants, the cries of children, none of it penetrates these hallowed walls. Here, the only sounds are those of devotion, the low, resonant hum of chanting that emanates from deep within the hidden sanctuary, a sound you feel in your bones more than you hear with your ears, and the gentle, almost imperceptible rustle of a priest's immaculate linen robe as he moves with a grace born of lifelong service. He stands before you, a figure of serene and unquestionable authority, positioned at the threshold of a yet more sacred court. He is not a god, but in this place he is their consecrated vessel, their earthly servant, and to show him disrespect is to show the gods disrespect. His head is shaved, the bare skin gleaming softly in the filtered light, a symbol of his ritual purity. His eyes hold a stillness that seems to look through you, not merely at you, seeing not just the person standing before him, but the state of your spirit, the harmony or chaos within your heart. The rules, the unspoken but unbreakable laws of conduct, rise within you as naturally and as powerfully as the Nile in its season of inundation. Your first instinct is not to speak, for your words are clumsy and profane in such a place. Your first instinct is to show. Your spine begins to curve in a slow, deliberate, and graceful arc, pulling your shoulders forward and tucking your chin down towards your chest. This is not the cringing posture of a slave before a master, an act of subservience born of fear.
It is an act of reverence, a physical acknowledgement of the cosmic order, of Ma'at, the divine principle of balance, truth, and harmony that holds the stars in their celestial courses and the pharaoh upon his throne. Your gaze, once it leaves his face, falls to the floor, resting on the intricate, geometric patterns of the polished limestone beneath your feet. To hold his gaze for more than a fleeting moment would be an act of profound and dangerous arrogance. It would be a challenge, a silent declaration of equality, an attempt to meet the divine authority he represents with your own mortal ego. You are not his equal, and in this sacred space, that knowledge is a deep and profound comfort, not a slight.
Your breath, too, is a crucial part of this silent, sacred conversation. You consciously draw it in slowly, evenly, through your nostrils, filling your lungs without any visible sign of effort. You are careful not to pant from the oppressive desert heat or from a nervous, fluttering heart. A calm and steady breath signifies a calm and steady spirit, a mind that is in harmony with the world and at peace with its place within it. A ragged, hurried breath is a sign of inner chaos, of a heart in turmoil, of a spirit not yet ready to enter the presence of the holy. Such a breath has no place here. As you hold your bow, you might bring one hand to rest gently over your heart, a gesture of sincerity and truthfulness, showing that your reverence comes from within. Or perhaps you extend your palms downward, parallel to the floor, a sign of peace and deference, a physical manifestation of your lack of aggression or challenge. These are not empty theatrical motions. They are a language without words, a physical vocabulary understood by all, a manifestation of your acceptance of your place in the vast and intricate universe.
The depth and nature of this bow are finely calibrated to the person you face and the place you stand. Here, before a priest in the temple, the bow is deep and sustained. In the presence of a high-ranking noble in his estate, it would be similarly profound. In the presence of the vizier, the pharaoh's right hand, it would be deeper still, your back almost parallel to the earth. And in the unimaginable, terrifying, and glorious presence of the pharaoh himself, a living God walking on earth, you would not bow at all. You would prostrate yourself fully, your forehead touching the ground, your body stretched out upon the earth, a willing and complete erasure of your own stature in the blinding face of divinity. Each gesture is measured, a precise note in the silent, ever-playing symphony of social and cosmic harmony. Here, in the temple's cool and ancient shadow, you are a small but essential part of that symphony. Your quiet, respectful bow, your calm and steady breath are your tribute, your prayer, your humble contribution to the immense, invisible, and all-powerful forces that order your world and give it meaning.
Speaking in Ma'at. Beyond the sacred silence of the temple walls, the world is a tapestry woven from sound. The air hums with the constant chatter of merchants in the marketplace, their voices rising and falling in the familiar cadence of negotiation. The rhythmic, grunting chants of laborers hauling massive limestone blocks for a new monument provide a steady, percussive beat to the day. The high-pitched laughter of children playing by the riverbank is a melody of pure, unthinking joy. But for you, an adult living within the ordered world of Egypt, every word you choose to add to this cacophony is weighed on an invisible, spiritual scale. This is the very essence of speaking in Ma'at. It is a concept that extends far beyond the simple idea of honesty. It is about speaking in a way that actively promotes and maintains balance, harmony, and cosmic order. A single careless word, spoken in a fleeting moment of anger or in the thoughtless pursuit of a joke, can be like a stone thrown into a perfectly still and sacred pool. Its ripples spread outward, invisibly but powerfully, disrupting the peace of a family, bringing discord to a village, and, in the most extreme cases, even threatening the stability of the state itself. The gods, it is known, see all and hear all, and they remember.
The ideal person, the one praised in the wisdom texts that are passed down from generation to generation of scribes, is the Geru Ma, a phrase that literally translates as the silent man. This does not mean a person who is mute or who never speaks their mind. It means a person who has mastered the art of listening, who understands that true wisdom is found not in speaking, but in hearing. He is the one whose mind acts as a sieve, catching the impulsive, the boastful, the cruel, and the unnecessary words before they can ever escape his lips and cause harm. His silence is not an emptiness, but a space filled with contemplation and observation. He thinks before he speaks, and often he decides that silence is the wisest response. As you walk through the crowded lanes of your town, you hear the unfiltered speech of others. A farmer complains loudly and bitterly about the tax collector, his voice laced with resentment. A woman speaks ill of her sister-in-law, her words dripping with envy. Two men argue heatedly over the price of a goat. You listen, you hear, but you do not add your own voice to this chorus of discontent and negativity. To do so would be to align yourself with Isephet, the terrible force of chaos, disorder, and untruth that is the eternal enemy of Ma'at. A wise man, as the great Vizier Ptolhotep wrote in his instructions, knows precisely when to be silent and understands that this is a greater strength than a quick tongue. Boasting of your own good fortune, a bountiful harvest, a promotion in your trade, a healthy son, is considered a particularly foolish and dangerous form of speech. It is a direct invitation for the envy of your fellow men, which can curdle into resentment and ill will. Worse, it is an affront to the gods, a display of hubris that suggests you attribute your success to your own merits rather than their divine favor. Such arrogance is often swiftly punished. Similarly, making promises you cannot be certain of keeping is a way of undermining your own integrity. Each broken promise weakens the trust that binds your community together, making all future words less valuable. A lie, of course, is the most direct violation. It is more than just an untruth. It is an active and malicious tear in the very fabric of Ma'at. It creates a false reality, a pocket of chaos and deception in a world that strives for truth and clarity. The lie complicates, it confuses, and it corrodes the bonds between people. The best path is to be mature and wise in your speech. Portable Landedness himself said, "Right speech is more rare than greenstone, yet it is found among the maidens at the grindstone." And so you learn to choose your words with the same meticulous care that a jeweler chooses his precious gems. The social hierarchy dictates the very tone and content of your speech. When you speak to a superior, a village elder, a priest, or your employer, your words are unfailingly respectful, your tone deferential and quiet. You never interrupt them while they are speaking. You do not offer your own opinions unless they are explicitly solicited. Your speech is a mirror, reflecting the established social order and reinforcing it with every carefully chosen syllable. When you speak to an equal, a friend, or a neighbor, Your words are measured and calm, aimed at fostering goodwill and mutual understanding. You avoid contentious subjects that might lead to argument, for to disrupt the harmony between friends is to create an unnecessary wound in the community. When speaking to a subordinate, an apprentice, a servant, or your own child, your words are clear, direct, and firm, but never cruel. To abuse your power, even verbally, is a gross violation of Ma'at, for it is understood that all people, regardless of rank, are part of the same cosmic order.
You cultivate the art of being a good listener, of giving others the space and silence to speak their own truth. You learn to consider their words carefully, to seek the intention behind them before forming your own response. In a legal dispute before the local elders, you would be expected to give your testimony without exaggeration, without omission, and without malice. The truth, in its purest and most unadorned form, is what is required. This is because the truth is what the feather of Ma'at, against which the heart of the deceased is weighed in the underworld, represents. To live a life of truthful, careful, and harmonious speech is to literally lighten your heart for that final, inescapable judgment. As you go about your day, you carry this profound weight, this constant responsibility. Your tongue is a powerful tool, capable of building a reputation or utterly destroying one, of creating peace or inciting devastating conflict. And in the quiet moments of the evening, you remember the teaching that has guided your people for 1,000 years. The silent man is found to be better than the talkative one. Your silence is not weakness, it is strength, wisdom, and a prayer for balance in a chaotic world.
Hierarchy in every step. The way you move through the world is a constant silent declaration of your station in life. It is a language spoken not by the tongue but by the body. Your posture, your pace, the very physical space you occupy are all governed by an unspoken yet universally understood set of rules, as rigid and as clear as the lines of hieroglyphs carved into a granite monument. This is the physical manifestation of the great social pyramid, a structure as solid and as imposing in daily life as the great architectural pyramids that rise from the desert plateau. At its single sacred apex is the pharaoh, a living god whose path is cleared, consecrated, and purified before his divine feet ever touch it. Below him, in descending tiers, are the high priests and the powerful nobles of the court, the vizier, and the great officials of the state. Then come the learned scribes, the skilled artisans, the respected soldiers. And forming the broad, sturdy, and essential base of it all are the countless farmers whose labor feeds the nation, the laborers whose sweat builds its monuments, and the servants who attend to the needs of those above them. You know your place in this grand divine design, and your body knows it too. It is a knowledge ingrained from your first wobbly steps, observed in the deep bow your father shows to the village elder, and in the way the entire bustling market falls silent and still when a noble's curtained litter, borne on the shoulders of 8 servants, passes by.
As you walk down a dusty road, a path trodden by generations before you, you see a procession in the distance. The fierce Egyptian sun glints off the polished gold in their broad collars and illuminates the fine, almost translucent pleated linen of their kilts. This is a person of importance, someone far above your station. Long before they are near, you and the other farmers and craftsmen beside you instinctively move to the very edge of the path. You do not need to be told. It is an automatic, ingrained response. You avert your eyes, your gaze falling to the earth, perhaps giving a slight respectful bow of the head as the procession passes. You make yourself physically smaller, less significant, drawing your shoulders in, granting them unobstructed passage.
To stand in their way, to force them to acknowledge your presence, would be an unthinkable breach of protocol. It would be an act of insolence so profound that it could have severe and immediate consequences. You are a part of the landscape through which they move, and you behave accordingly.
You learn to walk differently depending on who is beside you. When you accompany an elder of your own village, your pace, normally brisk and official, slows to match theirs. You walk slightly behind them, never perfectly beside them, a constant, subtle, physical signal of your respect for their wisdom and their years. You offer them your arm over a patch of uneven ground. You anticipate their need for rest. It is a duty, but it is also an honor, a way of publicly affirming the value your society places on age. In the presence of your own peers, you walk with a straight back and a steady gait, projecting an image of reliability and self-respect. In the presence of your own children, you are the one who sets the pace, your confident stride a model for them to follow. The very materials of your life also speak your rank. Your own kilt is made of simple, durable, undyed linen, practical for a day's labor under the sun. The scribe's kilt is of a visibly finer weave, a testament to his clean indoor work. The noble's kilt is a masterpiece of the weaver's and launderer's art, pleated with a master's skill, so fine you can almost see the light passing through it. Your sandals are of simple woven papyrus. His are of soft, expertly dyed leather, perhaps even adorned with small gold fittings. You carry your tools in your own hands. He is followed by a retinue of servants who carry everything he might need, from a water jar to a folding stool.
This clear and constant differentiation is not a source of resentment. It is seen as the very order of the world, a reflection of the cosmic structure ordained by the gods at the time of creation. Every person has their role, their divine function in the great cosmic machine that is Egypt. The farmer provides the bread, the soldier provides the protection, the scribe provides the knowledge, the noble provides the administration, and the pharaoh provides the direct link to the gods. Each role is necessary for the whole to function. Even within the close confines of your own home, a subtle hierarchy governs every movement. The head of the household, your father, is given the best seat, the one that catches the evening breeze. He is served his food and his beer first. Honored guests are treated with a deference that temporarily elevates them above even the master of the house. You learn to read the subtle cues of posture and dress in others, and to project the appropriate signals with your own body. A straight back, a steady gaze, and a calm gait project confidence and respectability. Slumped shoulders, a shifty glance, or a hurried, nervous walk might suggest a dishonest or chaotic character, someone not in harmony with Ma'at. Your every step is a part of this intricate social dance, a silent, continuous, and lifelong performance of your role in the grand, unshakable, and divinely sanctioned order of Egyptian life.
The sacred silence at table. The evening meal is a time of profound and welcome restoration, a sacred pause at the conclusion of a long and arduous day spent under the relentless gaze of the sun god, Ra. The oppressive heat of the afternoon has finally begun to recede, and the air inside your simple mud brick home is blessedly cooler. The light is soft and alive, cast by a single humble pottery lamp, its wick of twisted linen floating in a small reservoir of sesame oil. This gentle, flickering light casts long, dancing shadows on the plastered walls, transforming the familiar space into a place of quiet mystery and peace. The meal itself is simple, as it is most nights. A stack of warm, unleavened flatbread, a handful of sweet, sticky dates, a communal bowl of thick stew made from lentils and onions, and a large, sweating pottery jug of cool, nourishing beer. But this simple fare is received with a deep and sincere gratitude. For the ancient Egyptians, a meal was not an occasion for loud chatter, boisterous debate, or the sharing of idle gossip. It was a ritual of quiet communion, a time to honor the food as a direct gift from the gods of the earth and the river, and a time to share in the deep restorative peace of the household. The silence at the table was not awkward or empty. It was a sign of profound respect. Respect for the nourishment you were receiving, and respect for the people with whom you were privileged to share it. Before any food is touched, a bowl of water and a small linen cloth are passed around. You wash your hands, a small but essential ritual of purification that symbolically separates the grime and sweat of the day's labor from the sanctity of the communal meal. This act cleanses you, not just physically, but prepares your mind to receive your sustenance with the proper reverence. You sit on a woven reed mat on the cool earthen floor, or perhaps on a low three-legged stool if your family possesses such a luxury. The food is served in a large common dish placed in the center of your small circle, a practice that reinforces the unity of the family. The rules of sharing are deeply and implicitly ingrained in you from your earliest childhood. You eat only with your right hand. The left hand is considered unclean, reserved for tasks of personal hygiene, and to use it for eating would be a shocking and disgusting act. You take only a small portion of food at a time, using a piece of your flatbread to scoop up the stew. You never reach across another person or across the bowl to get a better piece. To do so would be to appear greedy and selfish, prioritizing your own desires over the needs of the group. Your movements are deliberate, unhurried, and graceful. To eat quickly, to stuff your mouth, to chew with loud noises would all be signs of poor breeding and a profound lack of self-control. It would suggest that you were ruled by your animal appetites rather than your higher, more ordered human spirit. If you are a guest in another's home, the rules of conduct are even more stringent and more carefully observed. You must accept whatever food and drink is offered to you with visible grace and sincere words of praise for your host's generosity. To refuse a dish would be a grave insult to the mistress of the house. To turn your back on another guest, even for a moment to speak to someone else, is considered a severe breach of etiquette, as it symbolically excludes them from the circle of communion. You must drink your beer sparingly. Beer was a fundamental staple of the Egyptian diet, a crucial source of calories, vitamins, and comfort. But drunkenness was seen as a contemptible and shameful state. The wisdom texts are filled with stern warnings against it, describing the drunken man as one who babbles nonsense, injures himself, falls into the dirt like an animal, and brings profound shame upon his own name and the names of his family. Moderation in all things was a central tenet of Ma'at.
At a lavish banquet in the home of a wealthy noble, the rules were precisely the same, just enacted on a much grander and more luxurious scale. Guests would be greeted by servants who would anoint their hands and faces with perfumed water. They would be offered cones of scented wax or fat to place upon their heads or their fine wigs, a symbol of festive luxury. Servants would bring course after course of roasted fowl, seasoned beef, exotic fruits, and delicate cakes sweetened with honey. Yet even amidst such overwhelming abundance, the core principles of quiet dignity, careful moderation, and sincere gratitude remained the absolute standard of behavior. The meal, whether a simple bowl of lentils or a feast fit for a king, was always a direct reflection of the cosmic order. It was a time for taking in the goodness of the earth in a calm, balanced, and appreciative way, reinforcing the essential bonds of family and community in the gentle, flickering, and sacred lamplight.
The ritual of scent and cleanliness. Long before the first tentative rays of the sun god Ra appear over the eastern desert horizon, painting the pale sky with strokes of rose and gold, your day begins with the purifying touch of water. It is a ritual as essential and as unconscious as breathing, a fundamental pillar of your existence. To be clean, in the worldview of ancient Egypt, was to be pure. The concept of cleanliness, known as wabet, transcended mere physical hygiene. It was a state of being that brought you closer to the gods and created a protective barrier between you and the forces of chaos, disorder, and decay that were ever present in the world. Each morning, without fail, you make your way to a large pottery basin filled with cool water that has been drawn from the life-giving Nile. You wash your entire body, from your face to your feet, perhaps using a chunk of natron, a naturally occurring salt compound which fizzes slightly in the water and acts as a potent cleansing and purifying agent for the skin. This act is more than just washing away the sweat of the night. It is a daily personal baptism, a ritual shedding of the slumber and inactivity of the night, and a conscious preparation for the duties and social interactions of the coming day. A priest, before daring to enter the sacred, hidden inner chambers of a temple, would undergo a far more elaborate and lengthy series of purifications, involving multiple washings and the recitation of sacred texts. But every single Egyptian, from the lowest farmer working in the mud of the fields to the highest noble living in a painted villa, shared in this fundamental duty of cleanliness. To be dirty was not just a personal failing. It was a sign of being careless, of being out of sync with the principles of Ma'at, a state that made you vulnerable to sickness, misfortune, and the influence of malevolent spirits.
After washing and drying your skin, you anoint your body with oil. In the harsh, dry climate of Egypt, where the sun and the desert winds conspire to leach all moisture from the skin, this is a necessary act of protection. But, like all things in your world, it is also much more than its practical function. The oil, perhaps extracted from the moringa tree or the castor bean, is often scented with fragrant essences of myrrh, frankincense, lily, or the intoxicating blue lotus. The fragrance is a personal signature, a pleasant and civilized aura that surrounds you as you move through your day. It is a sign of self-respect and, just as importantly, a sign of consideration for the comfort of others with whom you will interact. Both men and women take part in this elaborate ritual of preparation. They sit before a small, polished bronze mirror that reflects a hazy, golden image of their face, and they apply kohl around their eyes. The dark, dramatic powder, made from ground galena, creates a striking almond shape, a stark and beautiful contrast to their skin. This, too, is not merely for beauty. The kohl is believed to reduce the blinding glare of the sun, and it is also thought to possess powerful magical properties. It acts as a protective charm, warding off the eye infections that were a constant threat in the dusty environment. And, more mystically, it is believed to protect the wearer from the malevolent power of the evil eye, the envious glance of another that could bring bad luck or illness. It is both a cosmetic and a sacred amulet, painted onto the face each morning with a careful, steady hand and a focused mind.
Your clothing is a simple kilt of white linen, the color of purity and light. You ensure it is as clean as your circumstances allow. For the wealthy, the rituals of personal presentation were even more elaborate and time-consuming. They might wear heavy, intricate wigs of real human hair, carefully braided and set with beeswax, a symbol of status and a way to protect their own hair from the sun and from lice. These wigs were often elaborately scented. For banquets and festivals, a unique and striking custom was observed. A cone of perfumed animal fat or beeswax, infused with the scent of flowers or rare spices, was placed atop the wig. Throughout the long, warm evening, as the wearer socialized in the crowded hall, the cone would slowly, imperceptibly, melt from the heat of their body. It released its beautiful, expensive fragrance into the air around them and dripped down over the wig and shoulders, acting as a cooling, perfumed lotion. This may seem strange to another culture, but for the Egyptian, it was a symbol of celebration, luxury, abundance, and the vibrant essence of life itself. From the careful washing of your feet to the application of kohl around your eyes, from the simple, clean linen of your kilt to the complex perfumery of a noble scent cone, your personal presentation was a constant testament to your character. It showed the world that you were an ordered, respectable, and civilized individual living in harmony with the gods and with your community. It was a daily, personal ritual that reaffirmed your commitment to a life of balance and purity, preparing you to walk through the world not just as a person, but as a clean and proper vessel, worthy of living under the eternal, watchful gaze of the gods.
The art of hospitality. Imagine you are a traveler, a solitary figure moving through a landscape of immense and unforgiving beauty. The path you walk is a dusty ribbon that follows the great, life-giving artery of the river. The sun has been your constant, overbearing companion, a disk of white fire that has been baking the dust onto your skin and warming the worn leather straps of your sandals for hours. Your throat is dry, your shoulders ache from the weight of your small bundle, and your world has been reduced to the rhythmic sound of your own breathing and the crunch of your feet on the parched earth. In the shimmering distance, through the heat haze that rises from the ground, you see the low, gentle curves of mud brick walls, and rising from them, a faint, almost translucent plume of smoke from a cooking fire. This is not just a building. It is a sign of life, of hearth, of family, of sanctuary. To approach this door is to prepare to step into one of the most sacred and deeply ingrained unwritten contracts of Egyptian life, the profound and ancient ritual of hospitality. As a stranger, you are vulnerable, a leaf blown by the wind, but you are also a test. How you are received will be a clear and public measure of the household's adherence to Ma'at, and how you behave as a guest will be a direct reflection of your own character and your right to be called a civilized human being. The threshold of the home is not merely an entrance to a building. It is a sacred boundary, a line drawn in the sand between the harsh, chaotic, and unpredictable outer world and the ordered, peaceful, and protected world of the family.
As the host, standing within that protected world, your duty is immediate, absolute, and unquestioning. The moment the shadow of the traveler falls across your doorway, a series of obligations is set in motion. Before any questions are asked, who are you? Where are you from? What is your business? Comfort is given. A servant, or perhaps the wife of the master of the house, emerges from the cool darkness of the home carrying a pottery basin of cool water. To have your feet washed is the first and most powerful gesture of welcome. It is a ritual of purification that cleanses away the dust and weariness of the journey, a symbolic act of washing away the outside world and accepting the traveler into the purity of the home. You are then offered a seat, not in the sun, but in the cool shade of the courtyard, perhaps on a clean reed mat or a low wooden stool. And then comes the quenching of your thirst. You are handed a cup of cool water, or more likely, a large, unadorned pottery beaker of the household's beer. This simple, fundamental act is a symbol of life itself. It says, without a single word being spoken, under this roof you are safe. Your needs will be met. We are people of order and generosity. To refuse a traveler these basic, essential kindnesses was to commit a grave social and spiritual sin. It was to invite the disfavor of the gods, who were believed to sometimes walk the earth in the guise of humble strangers to test the hearts of mortals. It was to bring a profound and lasting shame upon your own name and the name of your family, marking you as people who were selfish, chaotic, and out of harmony with the divine order of the world. The greatest virtue was not just in giving, but in giving freely, joyfully, and without any expectation of reward or recompense.
As the guest, your own responsibilities within this sacred contract are just as deep and just as binding. You must receive these precious gifts of comfort with a visible and sincere humility and gratitude. You praise the coolness and sweetness of the water. You praise the fine, refreshing taste of the bread and the beer. You praise the comfort of the shade provided by the courtyard wall. You do not, under any circumstances, make demands or offer critiques of what you are given. You are an observer of the family's life, not an inspector of their means. You have been admitted into their personal sanctuary, and you must treat it with the same quiet reverence you would show in a temple. You must not speak of the family's private affairs, which you might overhear, or ask prying questions about their wealth, their relationships, or their disputes. Your conversation should be polite, general, and respectful. If you have brought a small gift with you on your travels, a piece of fine fruit from your own village, a well-made tool, a length of good rope, it is offered not as a payment for the hospitality, but as a token of your own good character, a sign that you too are a person of generosity and order. The true currency of this intricate and ancient exchange is, and always will be, mutual respect. And finally, you must know, with an innate and finely tuned social sense, when it is time for you to depart. The wisdom texts are perfectly clear on this matter. Do not wear out your welcome. A guest who stays too long ceases to be an honor and becomes a burden, and the delicate harmony of the household is disturbed by their prolonged presence. There is a natural, unspoken rhythm to a visit, and to honor that rhythm is to honor your host in the highest degree. In this intricate silent dance of manners, the host provides security and sustenance, and the guest provides gratitude and discretion. Together, for a brief and perfect span of time, they weave a small, flawless moment of ma'at in a world that can often be harsh, unpredictable, and unkind.
The unbreakable bonds of family. Within the cool, protective thickness of the mud brick walls of the home, another, even more powerful set of rules governs your existence. These are not the rules of public interaction or sacred ritual, but the laws of kinship, the unbreakable, invisible bonds that tie you to your past and bind you to your future. The family, in the Egyptian mind, is not merely a collection of individuals living together under one roof. It is a single, continuous entity, a living, breathing organism, a sacred line stretching back through countless generations to the very first ancestors, and forward into eternity through the generations yet to be born. Your first and most profound duty, a lesson taught to you from the moment you could understand your first words, is to your parents. The great scribe Ani wrote that you must repay your mother twice over for the milk she gave you from her breast, for the long years she carried you, tended to your every helpless need, and cleaned your filth without complaint. You must care for your father and your mother in their old age with the same unwavering devotion they gave to you in your vulnerable youth. You must ensure they are provided with bread and beer. You must support their faltering steps, and you must see to their every comfort until they make their final, inevitable journey to the west, to the land of the dead. To fail in this most fundamental duty was more than just a personal or a social failing. It was a spiritual crime of the highest order, a heavy sin that could weigh down your heart in the great hall of judgment and risk your own chance at an eternal afterlife.
Respect for all elders, not just your own parents, is absolute and unquestioning. In their presence, you do not speak first. You wait for them to address you. You offer them the best seat in any room, the one that catches the cool evening breeze or is closest to the warmth of the fire. You serve them the first and best portion of any food. Their wisdom, earned through a lifetime of observing the seasons of the Nile, of planting and harvesting, of living and loving and losing, is considered a treasure beyond any material price. Their stories connect you to a time before your own, and their guidance is a map for the treacherous path of life that lies ahead. This profound reverence extends even beyond the veil of life itself. In a quiet, respected corner of your home, there might be a small niche carved into the wall, a humble household shrine. Here, small but regular offerings of food, beer, and sweet-smelling incense are left for the ox, the blessed and effective spirits of your ancestors. Their names are spoken aloud, often and with reverence, for to speak the name of the dead is to make them live again, to ensure their continued existence and power in the afterlife. They are not gone, they are simply in another realm, and they continue to watch over the family, offering their spiritual protection and their silent guidance. Your life, therefore, is a testament to theirs, and your every action reflects upon them, for good or for ill.
Your own name, your Ren, is one of your most vital spiritual components, the very essence of your identity, but it is not entirely your own. It is inextricably entwined with the name of your family, your lineage. An act of dishonesty, of cowardice, or of disrespect does not just shame you as an individual. It brings a dark and lasting stain upon the name of your parents, your grandparents, and your entire lineage. Conversely, an act of great skill, of profound piety, or of remarkable generosity elevates everyone. A son's success as a respected scribe brings great honor to his father. A daughter's well-managed, peaceful, and prosperous household brings immense pride to her mother. The family is a single body, and you are but one part of it. Your joys are its joys, and your sorrows are its sorrows. This powerful sense of shared identity is a source of immense strength and comfort, but also of profound and constant responsibility. It is a continuous, lifelong reminder that you are never truly alone, that your individual life has a meaning far greater than your own personal happiness. You are a living, vital link in an eternal, sacred, and unbreakable chain that connects the past, the present, and the future. To fail in your duties is to weaken that chain for all who come after you. To succeed is to strengthen it, honoring all who came before. The procession of sorrows. There is a sound that can stop the heart of a village. A sound that cuts through the mundane, everyday noise of life with an immediate and chilling clarity, silencing the laughter of children and the calls of merchants in an instant. It is the sound of mourning. When a person's ba, their soul aspect, has finally left their physical body, a new and final set of social rules comes into force. A set of rituals designed to navigate the terrifying rupture that death has created in the fabric of the community. Grief in ancient Egypt is not a private affair, to be hidden behind the closed doors of the silent house. It is a public performance, a ritualized, theatrical, and shared experience that honors the dead, comforts the living, and publicly affirms the community's shared vulnerability in the face of the great mystery. The very moment that death is confirmed, the women of the family begin the formal lament. They may tear at their garments, a visible, violent sign that their world, their family, has been rent asunder. They undo their carefully braided hair, letting it fall wild and unkempt around their shoulders. They cover their hair and their faces with the dust and dirt of the earth, a visceral symbol of their abject despair and their connection to the very ground to which the body will soon return. It is a raw, physical expression of an internal, spiritual devastation. This raw, personal grief of the family is soon joined and amplified by a more structured and powerful sound. Professional mourners, women known as the Kites of Horus, arrive at the home of the deceased. It is their sacred and specialized duty to channel, focus, and magnify the sorrow of the family and the community. They are masters of the art of grief. With their own hair unbound and their chests sometimes bared, they weep, they wail, they beat their breasts, and they chant the praises of the one who has departed. Their cries are not random or hysterical. They are a rhythmic, hypnotic, and poetic lament that washes over the entire community, pulling everyone, even those who did not know the deceased well, into the shared sacred space of loss. As the body, now carefully washed, anointed, and wrapped in linen bandages by the embalmers for its long and perilous journey into the afterlife, is carried from the home, a formal procession forms. The family follows immediately behind the bier, their bodies bent and stooped in the posture of sorrow, their faces etched with the prescribed anguish. They are the chief mourners, and their grief is the epicenter of this great public event.
As the procession moves slowly through the dusty streets of the village on its way to the tomb, which lies always to the west in the direction of the setting sun, the world stops. A potter at his wheel stills his hands and his feet, the clay slowly ceasing its spin. Merchants in the marketplace fall silent, covering their wares. Children, seeing the procession, cease their games and fall back into the shadows of the doorways. To continue with the business of daily life as the dead pass by would be an act of profound and dangerous disrespect. It would be an insult to the memory of the deceased, to the grief of the family, and to the gods who preside over the afterlife. Onlookers, strangers and friends alike, bow their heads as the bier passes, their respectful silence a gesture of solidarity and a humble acknowledgement to the great mystery that has touched their neighbor and will one day touch them all. The funeral procession is a piece of living theater, a final, public story told about the life and status of the deceased. The size of the procession, the number of professional mourners hired, the richness of the funerary goods being carried to the tomb, all of it speaks volumes about the place the person held in the community. It is the community's last great act of service to one of its own, a collective effort of will and ritual to help propel the soul of the departed safely into the next world. In this powerful public display of shared sorrow, the entire society reaffirms its most fundamental belief, that life is a shared journey, and that even the final, terrifying step into the darkness of death is one that is taken together, supported by the voices and the presence of all.
The neighbor's wall. The world now shrinks, contracting from the vastness of the state and the solemnity of the temple to the intimate, immediate space defined by your own four walls and the walls of those who live directly beside you. The simple, sun-baked mud brick that separates your family's courtyard from your neighbor's is far more than just a physical barrier. It is a delicate, semi-permeable membrane of mutual respect, a daily test of your commitment to a life of harmony. You know the rhythms of their lives as you know your own, for the sounds of life travel easily through these walls. You hear the rhythmic scraping sound of their grinding stone in the pre-dawn darkness, the sharp cry of their new baby in the middle of the night, the low, comforting murmur of their conversation as they sit in the cool of the evening. In such close quarters,
Privacy is a concept understood not as secrecy or isolation, but as a quiet, deliberate, and constant act of non-interference. You do not stare over the wall into their courtyard. You do not deliberately listen to their family arguments, which are not meant for your ears. Your children are taught from a very young age not to run uninvited into their courtyard, to respect that invisible line that marks where your family space ends and theirs begins. Life is too close, too crowded, too inescapably intertwined for the friction that comes from a lack of respect for boundaries.
This respect is a two-way street, a constant, subtle exchange of courtesies that are the very mortar holding the village together. A tool that is borrowed, a hoe, a sickle, a wooden mallet, is returned not just promptly, but cleaned of your own dirt and ready for your neighbor to use, offered when a heavy water jar needs to be lifted. These small, everyday courtesies are the lifeblood of the community. An open, festering conflict with a neighbor is considered a catastrophic failure, a jagged tear in the delicate social fabric of the community. It is a public announcement of a failure of Ma'at that reflects poorly and brings shame upon both households involved. It is far better, far wiser, to live in quiet harmony, to swallow a minor annoyance, to offer a polite nod in the morning and a respectful silence at night. It is a lifelong commitment to maintaining the delicate peace that is required when human lives are lived in such close proximity. This peace is not a passive state. It is an active, daily creation, built from hundreds of small acts of consideration and restraint.
The relationship with your neighbor is a practical one, born of necessity. You rely on each other. If a fire breaks out, it is your neighbor's hands that will help you form a bucket line from the nearest canal. If a thief is heard in the night, it is your neighbor's shout that will join yours to raise the alarm. If a mother is sick, it is the woman next door who will watch her children for an afternoon. This web of mutual obligation is understood by all. To be a bad neighbor, to be noisy, to be nosy, to be selfish with your resources, to let your animals wander and eat their crops, is to risk isolating yourself from this essential network of support. In time, you would find that no one would be willing to help you in your own time of need. Your reputation as a person who disrupts the harmony of the community would spread, and you would be left to face the hardships of life alone. Therefore, the etiquette of neighborly relations is a form of practical wisdom. You cultivate a relationship of peaceful coexistence because your own survival and the survival of your family depends on it. You learn to read the subtle social cues, to know when your neighbor desires conversation and when they desire to be left alone. You learn to be generous with what you have, knowing that this generosity will be returned to you in the future. In this way, being a good neighbor is a daily, humble practice of Ma'at. It is about actively choosing harmony over conflict, cooperation over selfishness, and community over isolation. This intricate network of quiet respect and mutual support woven between the individual households is what creates a stable, peaceful, and resilient village, a place where life, for all its hardships, can be lived with a measure of security and grace.
The market's hum. The marketplace is a place of controlled chaos, a vibrant, joyful, and overwhelming assault on the senses. The moment you step into its crowded confines, the quiet, ordered world of your home is left far behind. The air here is thick and heavy, a rich stew of 100 different smells. The sharp, earthy scent of spices like cumin and coriander piled high in colorful mounds. The salty tang of dried fish from the river. The warm animal smell of sweating livestock. The sweet perfume of lotus blossoms being sold for offerings. And the ever-present smell of dust. The sound is a constant, undulating hum,
a symphony composed of 100 different conversations, the bleating of goats, the cackling of geese, and the loud, confident voices of merchants calling out their wares. But beneath this energetic, surface-level noise, a strict and ancient etiquette is constantly at play, a set of rules that governs every single transaction. This is the world of barter, a delicate and skillful dance of negotiation, and to navigate it successfully requires a deep understanding of its unwritten laws.
You approach a farmer's stall, which is piled high with a pyramid of gleaming red onions and heavy, striped melons. You do not begin the transaction by pointing out a flaw or by immediately demanding a price. To do so would be rude and aggressive. Instead, you begin with a polite and respectful greeting. You might praise the quality of his produce, admiring the size of the melons or the healthy look of the onions. This establishes a baseline of goodwill and mutual respect. You have brought with you a surplus of fine linen that your wife has woven, and you offer a length of it for a certain number of his melons. He, in turn, will examine your linen, feeling its weight and the tightness of its weave. He will praise your wife's skill before making a counteroffer, perhaps a slightly smaller number of melons, or the original number plus a few bunches of onions. The exchange is a conversation, a patient matching of needs, and a mutual assessment of value. A good negotiation ends with both parties feeling that they have made a fair and honorable deal. It is not about winning or tricking the other person.
The ultimate measure of a good merchant, and indeed of any person engaging in trade, is not the one who consistently gets the best price, but the one who is known throughout the market to use honest weights and measures. The scales, with their carefully balanced beam and their small, polished stone weights, are the central symbol of Ma'at in this commercial space. They are a physical representation of justice, fairness, and truth. To tamper with these scales, to use a weight that is secretly lighter than it should be, is one of the most profound and despised sins a person can commit. It is a theft that is insidious and cowardly, a deception that undermines the very foundation of trust upon which the entire economic life of the community is built. It is a direct act against Ma'at, and it is believed that the gods see such transgressions and will surely punish them, if not in this life, then certainly in the next.
For this reason, a person's reputation is their single most valuable currency in the marketplace. A name for fair and honest dealing means that you will always find a partner for exchange. People will seek you out, trusting that your goods are what you say they are, and that your measures are true. Your business will prosper because it is built on a foundation of trust. Conversely, a name for dishonesty, for sharp practice, or false weights will spread through the market like a poison. Soon you will find that people turn their backs as you approach. No one will trade with you. You will be an outcast in the very heart of public life. Your livelihood destroyed, not by misfortune, but by your own foolish and chaotic actions. The market is more than just a place of trade. It is the social hub of the town. It is where news from up and down the river is shared, where marriages are informally discussed, where friendships are maintained, and where the true pulse of the community can be felt. To thrive here requires more than just good products. It requires a mastery of the social code, an unwavering commitment to honesty, and the cultivation of a good and respected name. The craftsman's hands. Step away from the vibrant, chaotic hum of the marketplace and into the focused, almost sacred quiet of a workshop. Here, along a shaded lane where the air is scented with the clean fragrance of cut cedar and the sharp smell of hot metal, a different and more rigorous set of rules applies. A master carpenter is shaping an elegant leg for a noble's chair, his polished bronze chisel peeling away the fragrant wood in perfect, paper-thin curls. His movements are economical, precise, and filled with a grace that comes only from a lifetime of practice. Around him, in a circle of disciplined observation, his apprentices work on simpler tasks. The primary and most inviolable rule in this space is one of silence and unwavering attention. An apprentice does not chatter idly with his fellows. He watches his master. He learns the feel of the wood, the subtle differences in the grain, the precise heft and balance of an adze, the exact angle of a cut that will produce a perfect joint, not through verbal instruction, but through intense and prolonged imitation. The knowledge is passed from the master's hands directly to the apprentice's eyes, and eventually into his own hands.
The duties of an apprentice are a lesson in humility and service. He sweeps the sweet-smelling shavings and sawdust from the floor without ever being asked, keeping the workspace clean and ordered. He prepares the tools at the start of the day, carefully sharpening the chisels on a whetted stone, and cleans them at the day's end, oiling them against the damp night air. His master's word is absolute law, his critiques a precious lesson, not a personal insult. A sharp word from the master about a clumsy cut is a gift, a correction that will prevent a more costly mistake in the future. Respect in the workshop is paid not just to the master craftsman, but to the very materials themselves. Wood is a precious commodity, brought at great expense from distant lands like the Lebanon. Stone is a piece of eternity, and to fracture it through carelessness is a profound offense. Metal, smelted and worked with great effort, is a gift from the earth and the gods. To waste these precious materials through inattention or sloppy work is a deep and shameful offense, a sign of a character that is out of harmony with the world.
There is a slow, unhurried, and deeply meditative rhythm to the work in the craftsman's shop. There is a profound belief, unspoken but deeply understood, that a thing made with a calm heart and a focused mind will be imbued with that same harmony. An object made in haste or with a troubled spirit will carry that chaotic energy within it. This is why the master works with such deliberate, unhurried grace. He is not just making a chair, he is creating a piece of order, a small island of perfect form and function that will then go out into the world. He is a servant of Ma'at, expressing its principles of balance, precision, and harmony through the medium of his craft. The objects he creates are not merely functional, they are beautiful, and their beauty is a reflection of the divine order that he is channeling through his hands. The curve of a chair leg might echo the curve of a lotus stem. The intricate inlay of ivory and ebony on a chest might represent the stars in the night sky. The work is a form of prayer, a way of participating in the ongoing act of creation.
This is how skills are passed down through the generations, not through written manuals or diagrams, but through a silent, shared, and intimate understanding that flows between a master's hands and an apprentice's eyes. The apprentice spends years absorbing this silent knowledge, starting with the simplest tasks and only gradually being trusted with more complex ones. His progress is a slow and organic process, like the growth of a tree. A moment of breakthrough might come when he finally understands, not with his mind, but with his body, the exact amount of force needed to strike a chisel, or the feel of a joint that is seated perfectly. These moments are his true education. When he one day becomes a master himself, he will not teach his own apprentices with a long list of rules, but with the same quiet demonstration and patient correction that he received. He will be another link in the great, unbroken chain of knowledge and skill that stretches back into the dimness of the past, a living vessel for a sacred tradition. The workshop is a temple to the gods of creation, and the craftsman is its humble and devoted priest, his hands his instruments of worship.
The scribe's pallet. In another, quieter corner of the city, away from the dust of the workshops and the noise of the markets, the world is one of perfect, scholarly stillness. Here, a scribe sits cross-legged on a clean mat, his back straight, a fresh, gleaming roll of papyrus laid across the crisp white linen of his kilt. His world is governed by an etiquette not of the body, but of the intellect, a set of rules as precise and as elegant as the hieroglyphs he paints. He is a guardian of knowledge, a member of a small and elite brotherhood that holds the keys to civilization itself. And because of this profound responsibility, his tools are treated as sacred objects. The slender reed pen, its tip carefully chewed to the perfect consistency for holding ink, the solid cakes of black and red ink made from soot and ochre mixed with a gum Arabic binder, the smooth rectangular stone palette with its two carved wells for the ink, all are handled with a reverence that borders on the divine. Before he begins his work for the day, he might perform a small personal ritual, sprinkling a single drop of clear water from his water pot as a libation to the great god Thoth, the ibis-headed patron of his craft, the lord of wisdom, writing, and magic.
Among his fellow scribes, the social code is subtle but strictly observed. One does not boast of one's skill in calligraphy, for the quality of the hieroglyphs, their clarity, their grace, their perfect uniformity speaks for itself. To praise one's own hand would be an act of profound arrogance. One does not offer unsolicited corrections to another scribe's work unless one is his direct superior and teacher. The act of writing is a deeply personal and focused one, and to interrupt it or to criticize it lightly is a grave breach of professional respect. The written word in the Egyptian worldview holds immense and tangible power. It is not merely a representation of reality, it can shape reality. A legal contract inscribed on papyrus brings a new reality of ownership into being. A religious text, copied with perfect accuracy, ensures the continuation of the rituals that keep the universe in balance. A letter from the pharaoh, carried by a messenger, is the pharaoh's will made manifest hundreds of miles away. These documents are the very architecture of the state and the religion.
Therefore, the scribe's primary and most cherished virtue is meticulous, painstaking care. To make a mistake, to misspell a word, to omit a crucial phrase from a legal document, to incorrectly copy a sacred name in a funerary text, is to introduce a flaw, a pocket of chaos into the ordered world. Such a mistake could have dire consequences, both practical and spiritual. A wrongly written contract could lead to a bitter land dispute. A flawed funerary spell could endanger the soul of the deceased on its journey through the underworld. Because of this heavy burden of responsibility, the scribe works with a quiet, unwavering concentration that is almost a form of meditation. His posture is perfect, not for comfort, but for stability, ensuring his hand can move with fluid precision.
His mind is clear of distractions, focused entirely on the task before him. He is a pillar of the state, a silent and often invisible force of order, and his entire being, his calm demeanor, his clean appearance, his disciplined mind, reflects the precision, clarity, and permanence of the sacred symbols he so carefully paints onto the fragile papyrus.
His education has been long and arduous, beginning as a young boy. He would have spent years in a scribal school, endlessly copying old texts, memorizing the hundreds of complex hieroglyphic signs, learning the different scripts, the formal hieroglyphs for monuments, the flowing hieratic for documents, and later, the even faster demotic for everyday business. He would have been disciplined harshly for laziness or carelessness. This rigorous training was designed to forge not just a skilled writer, but a person of a particular character, patient, disciplined, and utterly reliable. As a result, scribes form a distinct social class. They are exempt from the manual labor that defines the lives of most Egyptians. They are the administrators, the accountants, the lawyers, the librarians, the architects, and the doctors. They are the memory of the nation, the keepers of its history, its laws, and its sacred stories. The scribe, sitting in his quiet corner, dipping his reed pen into the black ink, is not merely writing. He is holding the very fabric of his civilization together, one perfect, beautiful, and powerful symbol at a time. The soldier's loyalty. Life in the sun-baked dust of the barracks or on a long, grueling campaign is a world stripped bare of the subtle, nuanced social rules that govern the village and the city. Here, the intricate dance of politeness and indirectness is replaced by a code that is far more direct, far more brutal, and absolutely unwavering. The soldier's first, last, and most important duty is loyalty. It is a loyalty that is sworn to the sacred standard of his regiment, a pole topped with the symbol of a god or a sacred animal. It is a loyalty sworn to his immediate commander, whose voice he must learn to obey without a moment's hesitation. And it is a loyalty sworn, above all else, to the living God, his Pharaoh, for whom he is expected to fight and, if necessary, to die. This loyalty is expressed not through words of praise, but through the simple, profound act of unquestioning obedience. An order is followed instantly, without debate, without question, without hesitation. In the heat and chaos of battle, this reflexive obedience is the only thing that separates a disciplined army from a terrified mob.
The hierarchy in the army is brutally clear and visible to all. It is seen in the quality of a man's weapons, in the materials of his shield, in the insignia that might mark his rank, and, most importantly, in the unshakable authority in a commander's voice. A common infantryman, drawn from the ranks of farmers, knows his place. He respects the veteran who fights beside him, he obeys the squad leader who directs him, and he holds the great general, a distant and almost mythical figure, in a state of profound awe. Among the ranks of the common soldiers, a different kind of bond forms, a relationship forged in the crucible of shared hardship. These men share the same simple rations of bread and onions. They march for days on end under a brutal, unforgiving sun. They face the terror and the chaos of the battlefield together, a wall of shields and spears against the enemy. This shared experience creates a bond of intense and vital interdependence, a brotherhood of necessity.
You must be able to trust with your very life the man standing to your left and the man standing to your right. You must trust that he will hold his shield steady to protect your flank, that he will not break and run when the enemy charges. This trust is the invisible glue that holds the battle line together. Personal disputes,
The petty squabbles and rivalries that might fester in a village are handled quickly and decisively, and then put aside for the good of the unit. There is no room for long-held grudges when the lives of all depend on the cohesion of the group. Cowardice is the greatest and most unforgivable shame. A soldier who throws down his weapons and flees from battle brings a dishonor upon himself so profound that it can never be erased. He has not only failed in his duty to the pharaoh, he has betrayed the trust of his brothers in arms. Courage and steadfastness, on the other hand, are the highest virtues. The soldier who holds the line against overwhelming odds, who protects a fallen comrade, is a hero whose deeds will be celebrated in songs and stories.
A soldier's life is one of relentless discipline. It is a process of taking a collection of individual farmers and craftsmen and forging them through endless drilling and harsh punishment into a single, cohesive weapon for the pharaoh's will. They learn to march in step, to move as one body, to respond instantly to the calls of a trumpet. This discipline strips away their former identities, replacing them with a new collective identity, the soldier. It is a life of shared hardship, of boredom and terror, of camaraderie and loss, but it is also a life of shared honor. The soldiers of the pharaoh's army are the protectors of Ma'at, the force that defends the ordered land of Egypt from the chaotic forces that press in from the foreign deserts. They are the strong arm of the God King, the enforcers of his will, and this shared purpose gives their difficult lives a profound and powerful meaning. Theirs is a world governed by a simple, brutal, and unbreakable code of loyalty, courage, and obedience.
The woman's domain. While the public spheres of the state, the temple, and the military are almost entirely dominated by men, the Egyptian home is a distinct and powerful domain with its own clear hierarchy, and it is most often a woman who stands at its peak. As the Nebet Per, the mistress of the house, she wields a quiet but immense and largely unquestioned authority. Her word governs the entire rhythm and economy of the daily life of the household. It is her responsibility to manage the storing and careful rationing of the grain that is the family's lifeblood, ensuring that the harvest from one year lasts until the next. It is her skill that oversees the complex process of brewing the daily beer and baking the daily bread, the two great staples of the Egyptian diet. It is her hands and the hands of her daughters that are responsible for the endless, patient work of spinning flax into thread and weaving that thread into the linen that will clothe the family and provide a surplus for trade in the market. These are not trivial domestic tasks. They are the very bedrock of the family's survival, its health, and its prosperity.
Her daughters learn at her side from their earliest years, absorbing the vast and complex body of knowledge required to run a household, not through formal lessons, but through constant observation and guided practice. They learn how to grind grain between two stones without wasting a single kernel. They learn how much yeast to add to the dough, how hot the oven must be, how to judge the fermentation of the beer. They learn the songs that accompany the weaving, their rhythms helping to keep the work steady and true. This is a sacred and vital transmission of knowledge from one generation of women to the next. If the family is wealthy enough to have them, the household servants, both male and female, answer directly to her. She organizes their tasks, inspects their work, and manages their provisions. Within this domestic sphere, her competence, her foresight, and her wisdom are the ultimate law. A well-managed, peaceful, and prosperous home, one where the granary is full, the children are healthy, and the atmosphere is one of harmony, brings great honor to a woman. It is the public testament to her skill and her good character.
She is the still, stable center around which the rest of the family revolves, while she may, and indeed must, show public deference to her husband as the legal head of the household. Within the courtyard walls, Her influence is paramount. This is not a relationship of subjugation, but one of complementary power. The husband's sphere is the outside world, the field, the workshop, the state. The wife's sphere is the internal world, the home, the family, the creation of life, and the sustenance of it. The Egyptian ideal, often depicted in tomb paintings and sculptures, is one of a partnership. The husband and wife are shown standing together, often with his arm around her shoulders, facing the world as a single unit. Legal documents show that Egyptian women possess significant rights that were rare in the ancient world. They could own property in their own name. They could inherit land equally with their brothers. They could enter into contracts, and they could initiate a divorce. This legal standing reflects the deep respect accorded to the role of the mistress of the house. It was understood that for Ma'at to be complete, for the world to be in full and proper balance, both the male and the female principles must be present and powerful. The state needed the strength of the pharaoh, but the state was built upon the foundation of individual households, and those households were built upon the strength, wisdom, and authority of the women who managed them.
The river's law. The Nile is the very lifeblood of Egypt, a sacred divine entity, and at the same time, a busy shared highway and the source of all sustenance. Its banks and its shimmering, life-giving waters are governed by a set of ancient, unwritten laws that every Egyptian understands from childhood. A fisherman, standing in his light papyrus skiff and casting his weighted net, does not set it in a way that blocks the main channel or impedes the passage of a ferryman's boat carrying passengers from one bank to the other. There is an etiquette of the water, a shared understanding of how to use this communal resource without hindering others. Those who come down to the riverbank in the cool of the morning to fill their heavy pottery water jars give space to one another, forming a patient, orderly line. It is a silent, choreographed dance of daily necessity, performed without a word of instruction. It is understood that you do not pollute the water with waste upstream from where your neighbors are drawing their drinking water. To do so would be a profoundly antisocial act, a selfish disregard for the health and well-being of the entire community.
The intricate network of irrigation canals that carries the precious Nile water out into the fields is governed by this same code of communal responsibility. You do not block a canal that irrigates a field belonging to another family in order to take more water for your own. You do not divert its flow without the agreement of your neighbors. The river and the water it provides is a gift from the benevolent god Hapi, the corpulent, green-skinned deity of the inundation. To treat this gift with selfishness or disrespect is to risk inviting disaster, to tempt the god to withhold his bounty in the following year. Disputes over water rights, which inevitably arise in a land so dependent on controlled irrigation, can be bitter and intense. But they are most often resolved not by violence, but by an appeal to the village elders. The elders, whose long lives have given them a deep understanding of the river's ways and the community's needs, will listen to both sides of the dispute and deliver a judgment that is aimed not at punishing one party, but at restoring harmony and ensuring the fair distribution of the precious water for the good of all.
The river itself forces a sense of community upon the people who live by its banks. Its great annual flood, the inundation, is the central event of the Egyptian year. As the waters rise, they erase the boundaries of the fields, covering the carefully marked plots of land with a single, vast sheet of brown, fertile water. This yearly erasure forces neighbors to work together. When the waters recede, leaving behind a fresh, life-giving layer of black silt, the fields must be remeasured and the boundary stones re-established.
This massive task requires cooperation and trust between all the members of the community, overseen by scribes from the state administration. The river, in its immense power, is a constant, unavoidable reminder that all Egyptians, from the pharaoh in his palace to the humblest farmer in his mud brick hut, drink from the same divine source. They are all bound together by its timeless, life-giving, and sometimes destructive flow. To live by the river is to learn the lessons of interdependence, of shared resources, and of the need for communal cooperation. The unwritten laws of the Nile are the most fundamental social rules of all, for they are the rules of survival itself. The veiled glance of courtship. Love and desire are forces as ancient and as powerful as the Nile itself, but their expression in ancient Egypt is carefully managed and channeled by the strict and subtle rules of society. A young man, his heart struck by the beauty or the grace of a young woman he sees at a village festival, does not simply walk up to her and declare his feelings. Such a direct and public display of personal emotion would be considered unseemly, improper, and deeply embarrassing for both parties. Instead, courtship is a delicate and often wonderfully indirect process, a game of veiled glances, hidden meanings, and subtle signals. A glance that is held just a moment too long across a crowded courtyard, a small, thoughtful gift of a flower or a sweet cake passed between the two through a trusted younger sibling, a line of poetry full of longing and praise written on a broken shard of pottery and left where she might find it. These are the accepted and understood languages of the heart.
More often than not, however, a union is a practical and serious matter arranged between two families. A father, with his daughter's future security and happiness in mind, will look for a good match for her. He will seek a young man whose craft is sound, whose reputation in the village is one of diligence and honesty, and whose family is respectable. The ideal, praised in many texts, was to marry a neighbor, someone whose character, family, and social standing were already well known. This avoided the uncertainty and potential dangers of bringing a complete stranger into the tight-knit fabric of the family. The most important qualities sought in a potential spouse are not fleeting passion or physical beauty, but a calm and even temperament, a diligent and hardworking nature, and a respectful attitude, all the qualities that are believed to lead to a harmonious, stable, and well-ordered home. Romantic love, while certainly known and celebrated in poetry and stories, was not seen as the necessary foundation for a marriage. Rather, it was something that was expected to grow slowly and steadily within the safe, secure, and socially approved container of the marriage itself. A quiet affection nurtured by shared work, shared life, and the raising of children.
The young woman herself was not merely a passive object in this process. While her father's approval was essential, her own wishes were often taken into account. The love poetry of the time, filled with voices of both men and women, speaks of a deep and personal longing, suggesting that individual attraction played a significant role. A young woman could express her disinterest in a potential suitor, and a wise father would often listen. The ultimate goal was to create a partnership that would be stable and productive, and a union between two people who were entirely unwilling would be a poor foundation for such a future. The whole process was conducted with a sense of public decorum. The negotiations between the families would be carried out discreetly. There would be no public courtship, no period of the young couple spending time alone together. Their interactions would be limited to supervised meetings at family gatherings or public festivals. The entire community would watch this process with interest, for the creation of a new family unit was an event that affected everyone. It was a reaffirmation of the continuity of the village, a promise of future generations. The delicate, respectful, and indirect dance of courtship was the first step in weaving a new, strong thread into the social fabric of Egypt. The marriage contract. A marriage in ancient Egypt is not sealed by a grand, elaborate religious ceremony in a temple. The gods are certainly believed to bless a good union, but the act that legally and socially creates the marriage is a simple and practical one. The woman, accompanied by her family, gathers her personal belongings and moves into the house of her new husband. This public act of cohabitation is the declaration to the community that a new family unit has been formed. This social declaration, however, is often accompanied by a more formal and far more revealing written agreement. For those who could afford the services of a scribe, a marriage contract was a vital social and legal document, a testament to the remarkably practical and in many ways egalitarian approach the Egyptians took to the institution of marriage. It was not a romantic text filled with declarations of love. It was a clear-eyed, sober, and detailed legal agreement designed to protect the rights of both parties, but particularly those of the wife.
The contract would begin by clearly identifying the husband and the wife and stating their intention to live together. It would then meticulously list all the property that the wife was bringing into the marriage. This was her dowry, but unlike in many other cultures, it did not become the property of her husband. The contract would state explicitly that these goods, which might include furniture, linens, mirrors, jewelry, and even servants or land, remained her personal property. If the marriage were to end, she would take all of it with her. The contract would also specify the amount of bridal gift the husband was giving to the wife's family, and more importantly, the amount of food, oil, clothing, and other goods that the husband was legally required to provide for his wife and any future children on a yearly basis. This was not left to chance or goodwill, it was a legally binding obligation. To fail in this duty of provision was grounds for the wife to seek a divorce.
Crucially, many of these contracts outlined the precise terms of a potential divorce. Divorce was a relatively simple and common affair in Egypt, free from much of the social stigma that attached to it in other ancient societies. Either the husband or the wife could initiate a divorce. If the husband initiated it, he was often required to pay a significant fine to his now former wife, a form of ancient alimony, to ensure she was not left destitute. If the wife initiated it, she was still entitled to take her own property and was often given a share of the couple's jointly acquired assets. These contracts demonstrate the significant legal rights that Egyptian women possessed. They could own and dispose of property, they could inherit land equally with their male relatives, they could act as witnesses in court, and they could enter into legally binding contracts in their own name. The marriage contract was a powerful tool that protected these rights within the most important relationship of their lives. It was a clear and rational acknowledgement that for a household to be stable, harmonious, and in keeping with the principles of Ma'at, both the man and the woman must have their place, their value, and their security formally and legally recognized. It was the principle of cosmic balance, applied with remarkable foresight to the intimate union of two people.
Raising the future. Children, in the Egyptian worldview, are seen as the greatest of all blessings from the gods, the living embodiment of the continuation of the family line and the ultimate purpose of a marriage. In their very earliest years, they are cherished and indulged, allowed a freedom and a joyful, uninhibited existence that will be gently but firmly curtailed as they grow older. They run naked and playful in the warm sun, their small brown bodies covered in the dust of the village. Their heads are kept shaved, a practical measure against lice, but for a single thick lock of hair that is left to grow on the side of their head, the side lock of youth. This distinctive hairstyle is the universal symbol of childhood, worn by the children of both farmers and pharaohs. But as they grow, their true education begins, an education not found in a formal school for most, but in the constant, daily process of imitation and absorption. This is their apprenticeship in the ways of society.
A son, once he is old enough, begins to follow his father to the field or to the workshop. He does not learn his father's trade through lectures or books. He learns through his eyes, his ears, and his hands. He learns the rhythms of the agricultural seasons by watching his father plow, sow, and harvest. He learns the names of the tools and their proper use by carrying them. He learns the patience of a craftsman by watching his father work the wood or the stone for hours on end. A daughter, meanwhile, stays within the domestic sphere of the home with her mother. She learns the complex and vital skills of managing a household. She learns to grind the grain into flour, to bake the bread, to brew the beer, to spin the flax, and to weave the linen. She learns how to care for younger siblings, how to manage the household stores, and how to maintain the atmosphere of peace and order that is the ideal of every Egyptian home. This education is entirely practical, aimed at preparing them for the adult roles they are destined to fill.
Discipline is firm, but not typically cruel. The wisdom texts, written as advice from fathers to sons, are full of exhortations to heed the words of one's parents and teachers. A father is advised to teach his son to be strict when necessary, for a child left to his own undisciplined devices will surely grow up to be a fool and bring shame upon his family. The ultimate goal of this upbringing is to raise a child who is, above all, respectful, diligent, and understands their proper place in the grand and ordered scheme of the world. They are taught from their earliest years to show deference to their elders, to be quiet in the presence of their superiors, and to contribute to the work of the family. Play is a part of their lives, but duty is the central lesson. The most significant moment in a young person's life is the rite of passage that marks their transition to adulthood. For a boy, this is the ceremony of the cutting of the sidelock. His head is shaved completely for the first time, a public and symbolic declaration that he has left the protected world of childhood behind. He is now considered a man, ready to take on the duties of his father's trade, to marry, and to start a family of his own. He is now a full and responsible member of the community, expected to live his life according to the principles of Ma'at that have been so deeply ingrained in him throughout his upbringing.
The burden of a secret. In a society as close-knit and as public as an Egyptian village, where everyone knows everyone else's business, a person's reputation is their most precious and most fragile possession. It is a currency more valuable than grain or gold, built up slowly over a lifetime of honest dealings, diligent work, and respectful behavior. And because of this, the act of gossip is seen as a dangerous and powerfully destructive force. A single carelessly whispered word, a malicious rumor spoken in a moment of envy, can unravel a lifetime of careful work, staining a good name and sowing seeds of mistrust that can poison the entire community. Because of this ever-present danger, the unwritten rules of friendship are built upon the solid bedrock of discretion and loyalty. A true friend, as the wisdom teachings constantly remind, is one who does not repeat what he hears in confidence. He is one whose belly does not betray secrets. His mind is a locked chest, not an open sieve.
When you choose to share a confidence with another person, a worry about your health, a dispute with a relative, a secret hope for the future, you are performing an act of immense trust. You are placing your name, your ren, which is the very essence of your social being, directly into their hands. To betray that sacred trust, to turn that secret into a piece of village gossip for your own amusement or advancement, is considered one of the most profound and despicable social sins. It is a betrayal that introduces chaos, suspicion, and mistrust into the very heart of the community. It breaks the bonds of fellowship and leaves everyone feeling more isolated and more vulnerable.
If you have a dispute with someone, the proper and honorable way to handle it is directly, face to face, or through the formal mediation of a respected village elder. The dishonorable way is to engage in a cowardly campaign of whispers, rumors, and innuendo behind their back. Those who become known for having a loose tongue, who cannot be trusted to keep a confidence, soon find themselves gently but firmly ostracized. People will become guarded and cautious in their presence. Conversations will become shallow and meaningless, sticking only to safe and public topics like the weather or the state of the crops. No one will share their true thoughts or feelings with such a person. To be a known gossip is to be seen as a willing agent of Isafet, the force of chaos. You are a person who weakens the fabric of society for your own petty reasons. On the other hand, to earn a reputation as a trusted friend, as a silent and reliable keeper of secrets, is to achieve a high and honorable status. It is to be seen as a bastion of Ma'at, a person who values harmony and trust above all else. Such a person is a pillar of the community, someone to whom others turn in times of trouble, knowing that their words will be safe. The burden of a secret is a heavy one, but to carry it faithfully for a friend is one of the most important duties in the complex social world of ancient Egypt, a quiet and unsung act of building and maintaining the delicate web of trust that allows the community to function and thrive.
The weight of an oath. In a world that operates largely without a pervasive formal police force or a complex written legal code for everyday life, a person's word is their bond, and a sworn oath is the most sacred and unbreakable bond of all. In a court of law, which might be an informal council of village elders meeting under a shady sycamore tree, or a more formal tribunal presided over by a high official, you may be called upon to swear an oath to guarantee the truth of your testimony. When sealing a significant commercial agreement or making a promise of the utmost importance, you might be required to consecrate it with an oath. This is not a matter to be taken lightly. The act of swearing an oath invokes the entire cosmic order as a witness to the words you are about to speak. You do not swear on your own life or your own honor. You swear on something far greater and more powerful. You might swear on the life of a great god, such as Ra or Amun. More powerfully still, you might be required to swear on the life of the pharaoh himself.
This act of swearing an oath on the pharaoh's life is the most solemn and terrifying promise a person can make. The pharaoh is not merely a king, he is a living god, the earthly incarnation of the god Horus, and the linchpin that connects the human world to the divine realm. To swear on his life and then to speak a lie is an act of unimaginable audacity and sacrilege. It is not merely a lie told to another person, it is a direct offense against the gods, a blasphemy against the king, and an attack on the very stability of the state. The consequences for breaking such an oath are not just social, the complete and utter loss of your reputation and your place in the community, but are believed to be immediate and spiritual. The gods, it is universally believed, would see your perjury instantly. Punishment, whether in this life or in the next, was considered swift and certain. It might come in the form of a sickness that withers your body, a blight that destroys your crops, or a terrible fate for your soul in the afterlife.
This profound and deeply ingrained belief in the magical and divine power of a sworn oath was a fundamental pillar of Egyptian justice and social order. It was a powerful mechanism for ensuring truth in a world where the only ultimate witnesses were the watchful, all-seeing eyes of the gods. When a person placed their hand on a sacred object and swore their oath, they were stepping out of the mundane world of human fallibility and into a sacred space where only the absolute truth,
the truth of Ma'at could exist. This belief was so powerful that it was often enough to settle disputes without any further evidence. The willingness of one party to swear a powerful oath and the unwillingness of the other was often taken as a clear sign of where the truth lay. The weight of an oath was the weight of the entire cosmos, and for the ancient Egyptian, there was no heavier burden to bear than the consequence of speaking an untruth after invoking the sacred names of the gods and their king.
The boundary stone. In a land whose very existence is defined by the great cyclical drama of the Nile, a land where the annual flood, the life-giving inundation, could wash away all familiar landmarks, the boundary stone was a profoundly sacred object. It was not a grand or beautiful monument. It was typically a heavy, roughly hewn, and purely functional stone, set deep into the earth to mark the invisible, yet all-important line where one farmer's field ended and his neighbor's began. To the casual eye, it was just a rock. But in the social and spiritual landscape of Egypt, it was an anchor of order in a world that was, for a few months every year, returned to a state of watery chaos. To move a boundary stone in the dead of night, to stealthily shift it by just a few handbreadths in order to steal a precious sliver of your neighbor's fertile black land, was considered a terrible and despicable crime. It was a theft not just of soil, but of order itself. It was a deliberate act of introducing chaos into the divinely ordered world, and it was a sin that was condemned in the most powerful religious texts. The deceased, in their final judgment, had to stand before the gods and declare, "I have not shifted the boundary marker of the fields."
Disputes over land, which were inevitable in such a densely populated agricultural society, were not settled by private feuds or violence. They were brought before the local council of elders, the Kenbet. This was not a formal, intimidating courtroom. The Kenbet would often meet in a public and accessible place, under the cool, deep shade of a large sycamore tree, a traditional spot for dispensing justice and making communal decisions. Here, the two farmers would present their case. Scribes might be called upon to consult old land registers, documents that recorded the dimensions of the fields from previous years. Other neighbors might be called to give their own testimony, to speak of where they had always known the boundary to lie. The goal of the elders was not simply to determine the cold, hard facts of the case, but to do so in a way that would restore harmony to the community. Justice was seen as a process of healing, of reestablishing the correct and proper order of things. A judgment would be rendered, and both parties would be expected to accept it, to shake hands, and to go back to being peaceful neighbors. To refuse the judgment of the elders was to defy the entire community.
The boundary stone was a physical manifestation of this core Egyptian idea that everything and everyone in the universe has its proper, designated place. The sun has its path across the sky, the river has its banks, the king has his throne, and the farmer has his field. To disturb any of these divinely appointed places is to invite the forces of Isefet, of chaos, into the world. The act of respecting your neighbor's boundary stone was, therefore, a small daily act of cosmic maintenance. It was a recognition that your own prosperity was inextricably linked to the stability and prosperity of the entire community. A world where boundaries were not respected would be a world of endless, exhausting conflict, a world where no one could be secure in their own property, a world that would quickly devolve into chaos and starvation. The humble, unadorned boundary stone, half buried in the rich black earth, was thus a symbol of the very foundation of Egyptian civilization. It represented the triumph of order over chaos, of community over individual greed, and of the sacred, enduring principles of Ma'at, over the fleeting and destructive impulses of humanity. It was the anchor that held the world in place. The Whispers of Magic. Magic, known as Heka, was not a fringe belief in ancient Egypt. It was not the domain of outcasts or heretics. It was a fundamental and powerful force of the universe, a divine energy that the gods themselves had used to create the world and all that was in it. For the ordinary Egyptian, Heka was woven into the very fabric of daily life, an invisible current that could be harnessed for purposes of both protection and harm. And, like all other aspects of life, it had its own strict etiquette, its own sense of what was proper and what was forbidden. It was considered perfectly acceptable, even wise and prudent, to make use of protective magic in your daily life. Every Egyptian, from the poorest to the wealthiest, would wear an amulet for protection. This might be a small faience charm of a jed pillar for stability, an ankh for life, a tayet knot for the protection of the goddess Isis, or a powerful eye of Horus to ward off evil and sickness. These were not seen as mere superstitions. They were seen as essential tools for navigating a world filled with unseen dangers. You might hire a lector priest or a scorpion charmer, a person with specialized knowledge, to recite protective incantations over your home to keep it safe from venomous creatures. You might place a small, magical ivory wand carved with protective deities near a sleeping child to guard them against the demons of the night. If you fell ill, you would certainly go to a physician, but the physician's treatment would be a combination of practical remedies, herbal potions and poultices, and magical spells designed to drive out the malevolent spirit or angry god that was believed to be causing the illness. This was all considered good and necessary magic. It was a way of aligning yourself with the forces of order, of using the power of Heka to maintain health, safety, and harmony to reinforce Ma'at in your own life.
But there was a darker, deeply feared, and utterly forbidden side to magic. To use Heka to curse a neighbor, to create a wax figurine of them and stick it with pins in order to cause them to fall ill or their livestock to die, was a terrifying crime and a profound violation of Ma'at. This was considered an act of pure chaos, a malicious attempt to subvert the natural order of things for your own selfish gain. Those who were suspected of practicing such malevolent magic were feared and shunned by the entire community. To be known as a sorcerer was to be an outcast, a person whose very presence was a source of danger and disruption. The line between a wise healer who knew the right incantations to soothe a fever and a dangerous sorcerer who knew the right words to cause one was a matter of intent, and the community was the ultimate judge. The whispers and accusations of black magic were taken very seriously and could lead to formal legal action and severe punishment, even death. The etiquette of magic was thus a reflection of the core principles of Egyptian morality. Magic used for protection, for healing, and for the maintenance of order was good and proper. Magic used for harm, for selfish gain, and for the creation of chaos was an abomination, a direct assault on the gods and the very structure of the universe. The celebration of the gods. During a great religious festival, like the beautiful feast of the Opet at Thebes or the festival of the god Min, the strict and clearly defined social hierarchies of daily life would seem to dissolve, softening into something more fluid and communal, but they would never disappear entirely. For a few days, the entire community, from the highest-ranking official to the humblest laborer, would pour into the streets and avenues of the city to witness the grand procession of the god's statue, hidden from profane eyes within its sacred shrine, and carried on a gilded bark upon the shoulders of the priests. This was a time of collective joy, a sanctioned and necessary release from the toils and constraints of everyday existence.
the air would be filled with the sound of music, the rhythmic beat of drums, the clear, high notes of the flute, the shaking of the sistrum. There would be professional dancers, their bodies moving in ecstatic celebration. There would be an abundance of food, bread, cakes and meat, and rivers of beer, distributed freely to the populace by the vast temple estates.
For a few precious days, the normal rules of decorum were relaxed. It was a time for feasting, for singing, for dancing, and for celebrating with a fervor and an abandon that would be entirely unacceptable in daily life. This was a sanctioned, temporary return to a more chaotic, primeval state, a release of the social pressures that built up over the course of the year. Paradoxically, this temporary descent into a more joyful and chaotic state was believed to be essential for strengthening the social order for the rest of the year. It was a safety valve, a way of renewing the energies of the community and reaffirming their collective bond with their gods and with each other. Yet even in this intoxicating atmosphere of festive release, the core rules of society still held firm. You would still show the utmost deference to the priests who carried the god's bark. You would still make way for the nobles and high officials who walked in the procession. You would not cause a drunken brawl or engage in behavior that would bring public shame to your family. The festival was a celebration, not an excuse for complete lawlessness. It was understood that the joy and the feasting were happening within a sacred context, under the watchful eyes of the gods themselves. To behave shamefully at a god's own festival would be a particularly grievous offense. The festival, therefore, was a perfectly balanced event. It allowed for a necessary and healthy release of emotion and a temporary blurring of social lines, but it did so within a structured and ritually controlled environment. It was a reminder that even joy, even ecstasy, even celebration had their proper time, their proper form within the grand, all-encompassing cosmic design of Ma'at. It was a way for the entire society to recharge its spiritual batteries before returning, refreshed and renewed, to the quiet, ordered, and disciplined routines of daily life.
The shadow of the foreigner. The Egyptians, living in their long, fertile valley protected by the vast and inhospitable deserts on either side, saw their land as the pinnacle of creation, a place of perfect and divine order set in the very center of the world. This land, this Kemet, the Black Land, was a gift from the gods. Surrounding it on all sides was the Deshret, the Red Land, the chaotic, uncivilized, and dangerous world of the deserts and the foreign lands beyond. The peoples who inhabited these lands, the Nubians from the south with their dark skin, the Libyans from the west with their feathered hair, the Asiatics from the east with their heavy beards and colorful robes, were often viewed with a deep and ingrained suspicion. They spoke strange, incomprehensible tongues. They worshipped strange and seemingly savage gods, and they followed strange and barbaric customs. They were, in the Egyptian mind, people who lived outside the blessed light of Ma'at.
This worldview shaped the etiquette for dealing with foreigners. An encounter with a foreigner was, for the ordinary Egyptian, a rare and notable event, and it was handled with a mixture of cautious curiosity and a quiet assertion of cultural superiority. The sacred and ancient duty of hospitality, however, often overrode this inherent suspicion. A foreign merchant who arrived in a bustling port city on the Nile Delta would be treated with a cautious but correct welcome. His goods would be carefully examined, his documents checked by scribes, and his behavior closely watched. But he would be allowed to trade, for Egypt, for all its insularity, relied on foreign trade for essential goods like timber, precious metals, and incense.
An emissary arriving from the court of a foreign king would be received at the pharaoh's court with all the pomp and ceremony due to his station. This was not done out of respect for the foreign king, but as a reflection of the pharaoh's own power and magnificence. To treat a foreign envoy poorly would be to diminish the pharaoh's own stature.
For the ordinary farmer or craftsman, an encounter with a foreigner, perhaps a trader leading a donkey caravan through the village, would be an occasion for staring and quiet commentary. You would be polite, but you would be reserved. You would not invite them into your home with the same warmth you would a fellow Egyptian. There was an invisible wall between you, a wall built of language, custom, and a profoundly different understanding of the world. This reserve was not necessarily born of hatred, but of a deep-seated belief in their own chosenness. To be Egyptian was to be a true human being, a remit. To be foreign was to be something other, something less. The rules for dealing with outsiders were therefore a way of constantly reinforcing what it meant to be Egyptian, to live in the light of Ma'at, to speak the language of the gods, to inhabit the blessed and perfect land that was protected by the pharaoh and nourished by the Nile. It was to live in an ordered garden, surrounded on all sides by a wild and chaotic wilderness. The heart's final measure. And so, after a long lifetime spent navigating the thousands of intricate, unwritten rules of your society, the correct way to speak to a superior, the right way to walk past the temple, the proper way to eat at a shared table, the sacred way to mourn the dead, the honorable way to love your family, the diligent way to perform your work, the journey finally comes to its inevitable end. Your ba, your soul, separates from your body, and you are led by the gentle, jackal-headed god Anubis into the vast and silent hall of two truths. Here, in this final, awesome moment of reckoning, all the social structures that defined your earthly life fall away. There is no one here to vouch for your good reputation. Your social standing, your wealth, your family name, all have become meaningless. There is only you, your naked and trembling heart, and the great golden scales of justice.
On one side of the scales, the goddess Ma'at herself, the embodiment of truth and cosmic order, places her single, pure, white ostrich feather. It is impossibly light, the symbol of a life lived in perfect harmony with the universe. On the other side of the scales, your own heart is placed. And as you watch, holding your non-existent breath, you finally and completely understand. Every single social rule you followed throughout your long life was a preparation for this one singular moment. Every act of kindness to a stranger, every honest deal made in the marketplace, every duty to your parents faithfully fulfilled, every respectful silence you kept, every word you spoke in truth, every time you chose harmony over conflict, order over chaos. These were not just customs, not just traditions. They were the very actions that made your heart light, that purged it of the heavy dross of selfishness, greed, and deceit. They were what kept it in balance with the feather.
The 42 divine judges ask you to make your negative confession, to declare the sins you did not commit. I have not stolen. I have not lied. I have not been arrogant. I have not caused sorrow. As you speak these truths, you watch the scales. If your heart is heavy with the weight of lies, of cruelty, of selfish and chaotic acts, the scale will dip, and the monstrous creature Ammit, the devourer of the dead, will raise her terrible head, ready to consume you, to condemn you to a second and final death of utter oblivion. But if you have lived your life well, if you have striven to live in accordance with Ma'at, your heart will be as light as the feather. The scales will balance perfectly. Thoth,
the divine scribe, will record the verdict, and Osiris, the great lord of the underworld, will welcome you into the eternal, peaceful, and perfect paradise of the Field of Reeds. The vast, complex, and all-encompassing social code of ancient Egypt was, in its entirety, a practical and spiritual guide for this one ultimate purpose: to teach you how to live a life worthy of passing, whole and justified, into the eternal, unchanging, and blissful light of the afterlife. As the last echoes of the judgment fade into an infinite silence, and the soul of the justified steps into the golden light of the Field of Reeds, the world of the living continues its eternal rhythm. The sun dips below the western desert, painting the sky in hues of fire and lilac, and the cool, star-dusted night settles over the Nile Valley. The social rules that guided the day, the deferential bow, the carefully chosen word, the shared meal, the duty to family, the respect for the dead, all dissolve back into the very fabric of life, as natural and as unquestioned as the rising of the moon. These were not laws written on papyrus to be consulted and debated by lawyers. They were an invisible architecture, a force as powerful and as pervasive as gravity that ordered every single interaction, from the grandest temple ceremony to the most intimate family meal. It was the living, breathing embodiment of Ma'at, the great and beautiful principle of cosmic balance that held the forces of chaos at bay. To live by these rules was to do your small, essential part in maintaining the order of the universe itself. Every quiet gesture of respect, every act of kindness to a stranger, every moment of filial piety was a small but vital thread, woven together with millions of others to create the strong, resilient, and enduring tapestry of their civilization. And as the first stars begin to appear in the vast, dark, and silent sky, you can almost feel it, the profound and deep peace of a world where everyone knows their place, and every action, no matter how small, has a deep and sacred meaning, echoing in eternity.